Christmas Eve. Winter, 1954. The streets were glowing with warm lights. Families gathered around dinner tables. Children waited excitedly for morning. But on the cold stone steps of an old church, one forgotten man prepared to spend Christmas alone. He had once worn his country's uniform with pride. He had survived a war. He had saved lives. Yet now, no one remembered his name. People hurried past him without a glance.
Until one little girl, carrying nothing more than a piece of homemade bread and a red wool scarf, stopped walking. That small act of kindness would awaken an entire town and remind everyone what Christmas was truly meant to be. Tonight, let us journey back to Christmas Eve in the 1950s and discover the touching story of the homeless veteran on Christmas Eve.
The winter of 1954 arrived quietly across small towns in America. Fresh snow covered rooftops. Church bells echoed through peaceful streets. Store windows sparkled with Christmas decorations. The smell of cinnamon, pine, and freshly baked bread drifted through the cold evening air. For many families, Christmas was a season of warmth, laughter, and togetherness. But for others, it was the loneliest night of the year. Hidden behind the joyful celebrations were men whose stories had slowly been forgotten. Some had once worn military uniforms. Some had crossed distant oceans. Some had returned home carrying invisible wounds no one could see. One of those men was Thomas Walker. He was 51 years old. His brown military coat had faded with time. Its buttons no longer matched. The sleeves had been carefully stitched more than once. His boots were cracked from years of walking. His grey wool blanket was thin against the winter wind. Yet, despite everything he had lost, Thomas still polished the small brass badge he carried in his pocket every Christmas Eve. It was the only reminder that once someone had called him a hero. Years earlier, Thomas had returned home after serving his country. He dreamed of beginning a quiet life, perhaps buying a little house, finding steady work, starting a family. Instead, the world moved on more quickly than he could. The factory where he hoped to work had already filled its positions. Friends gradually disappeared into their own lives. His parents passed away within a few years. Medical care for struggling veterans was not always easy to find. Little by little, Thomas lost everything except his memories. He never begged. He never complained. He simply walked from town to town, doing small jobs whenever he could, repairing fences, stacking firewood, cleaning barns, enough to buy a little food, but never enough to truly start over. Every Christmas Eve, he returned to the same little church in a quiet American town. Not because anyone invited him, but because the church bells reminded him of home.
The old stone steps offered shelter from the wind. The warm light shining through the stained glass windows reminded him that goodness still existed somewhere in the world. As evening fell,
snowflakes drifted silently through the golden glow of the street lamps. Families hurried past, carrying wrapped gifts. Children laughed while pulling wooden sleds across fresh snow. Nobody noticed the quiet man sitting alone on the church steps. Or perhaps they noticed, but chose not to look. Thomas quietly removed his worn leather gloves. He looked toward the church door, then into the dark winter sky. Softly, almost like a whisper, he said, "Merry Christmas, Emily." No one standing nearby understood those words. No one knew who Emily had been. No one knew why Thomas returned every Christmas Eve. No one knew that inside his old coat pocket rested a small folded letter that had remained unopened for nearly 10 years. As the church bells rang across the snowy town, small footsteps approached through the falling snow. A little girl, wearing a bright red scarf, slowed her pace. She looked at the lonely veteran. Then, without fear, without judgment, she smiled. And in that simple smile, everything began to change.